All right, I hear I'm live, so I'm going to go for it. Man, this room is packed. Um, all right, so thanks for coming to my talk today. I'm Kaylee Kipe. I am the co-owner and the lead business consultant for Hibou Corp. We are a United States-based Odoo partner and implementer. And today we are talking about RMAs, everybody's favorite topic, right? So what are RMAs? Well, if you're here, I think you know what an RMA is, but I'm just going to describe it anyways. It's a return merchandise authorization. So it's the way in which customers that purchase goods from you return those goods to you. And if you are a company that supplies goods, then you have encountered RMAs. Even if you have a policy that says you do not accept returns, I can basically guarantee there's at least one loophole in there. For example, if items arrive damaged or in a non-working condition. So just because we have to deal with them, though, it does not make it fun. RMAs can be complex and they can be time consuming and they can be an important touch point for a customer. So they can leave a customer with a very good experience, or it can leave a customer with a bad taste in their mouth if they have a bad return experience with your company. So with that in mind, how can we ensure consistent results across all customers and all employees while still giving them the tools to feel empowered about the experience and to make good decisions? Well, in order to do this, there are going to be some requirements, right? So the first requirement is that the customer is going to need to be able to initiate the return themselves, or at least ideally they can. And they're going to want to receive real-time communications about their return, what the next steps are, things like that. And in fact, 92% of customers will buy from your company again if they have a good return experience. So like I said, this can be a positive experience or it can be a very bad experience. And if they have a positive experience, you may actually be gaining a long-term customer. So you really want to take this process seriously. Additionally, we need to make sure that the data that gets filled in for returns is consistent and that the outcomes of a return are repeatable. So we don't want to have different outcomes and different processes for every scenario. We want to kind of have a template or a basis where we can expect certain things to occur from the return process. And then we're going to need flexibility. So like I said, we want repeatability, we want consistent outcomes, but no business that I'm aware of has a single return scenario, right? So you're going to have a situation where somebody just wants to return the item because they've changed their mind. That's going to be different from they received a damaged item, which might be different from a warranty return where the item arrived in working condition, but now it's no longer in good condition, they have to return it. And beyond that, we actually need even more flexibility because some people will just want to return the item. Some people want to return the item and get a replacement, and still other people or other businesses, they may have products that the cost of goods is so low that actually processing the returns of the goods isn't worth it. And so when something arrives damaged or it's a warranty, they don't even bother getting the replacement or the return back from the customer. They just issue a replacement. So we need flexibility for these scenarios as well. So I'm obviously giving the talk today because I have a solution that I want to present to you guys. So without further ado, we are going to jump in and we're going to start doing a live demo of the Hibou RMA's functionality. All right. So here we have the RMA's app, and the way in which we ensure that we're going to get consistent outcomes is building up templates. So we don't want the employee to need to make every decision every time they get a request for a return. We want them to be able to select an option from multiple options for your different scenarios and kind of have a playbook that what's going to occur, what do they need to do throughout that process. That's what we call RMA templates. So let's look at this sale return template I have here. So we have some options for how this return needs to interact with other records within Odoo. So this top one right here would be manual. It's completely manual. This is a really good option if you're doing like legacy returns. You don't have the sale orders in Odoo, so you don't really have any orders to base the return on. Or it's also a really good option for like returning items to vendors or things like that where you have to build it up manually. Next is stock picking. So if you don't use sale orders, for example, you could base your returns on transfers or delivery orders that have been processed to a customer. Next up, and the one we're really going to focus on today, is sale orders. So essentially, as you'll see, you select a sale order and then you build up the RMA based on the items that are on that sale order. And then 2 items we're probably not going to have time to cover today, but these are related to cores. So if you're interested in cores, what those tend to be most commonly used in the automotive industry. Say you get a replacement battery for your car, you pay a deposit, and when you return your old battery, you get a refund for that deposit. So if you're interested in that, I don't think we'll have time today, but you can watch my previous talks on RMAs and you'll be able to see it there. So as we go down here, it's going to jump over to this other side. So responsible users here is one or more users that you would like to receive a notification when a new RMA is created. This is specifically really important for the customers initiating the RMAs. Often when an RMA comes in, you don't just automatically confirm and approve every RMA a customer submits. Somebody reviews them and makes sure it's appropriate and that they're going to allow the return. So a responsible user allows us to schedule an activity for one or more users so they can review and confirm those RMAs. Next up is decrement ordered quantity. So what this means from a sale order perspective is, do you want to reduce that ordered quantity column on the sale order when an item is returned? This can be important for 2 reasons. The first one's going to be if you invoice on ordered quantity, because if you need to issue a credit note for the return and you invoice on ordered quantity, you're going to need that ordered quantity to go down for your invoicing policy to be triggered. The second reason you might want to do this, even if you invoice on delivered quantities, is if you base your purchases on prior sales history. Let's imagine that you have sold 100 of one product in a month. Well, to your purchasing team, this is a good selling product. You need to purchase 100 or maybe 110 for next month. But what if 50 of those were returned? Well, now your purchasing is thrown off. So you really might want to do this if you're using that sale order history for your purchases, so that way you're making good purchasing decisions. Next up is warranty. So all this is a checkbox, and I'm going to show you what this relates to. It's going to be related to some product settings, so that way you can have different return eligibility periods for a sale return versus a warranty return, right? So warranties, you tend to need to have a longer return period for defects and things like that. And so that's what gives you the flexibility to say, in this scenario, our return period is longer because it's a warranty. Then we have expiration. So if an RMA is not completed within a certain period of time, do you want that RMA to move into an expired state and essentially remove it from eligibility for the customer to return those, say, 2 years later? They say, hey, I have an RMA for this product. So you may want to expire those over a period of time. Company is going to be really helpful in a multi-company environment, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about inbound and outbound pickings, but one thing is important is that you get to choose like your picking operation types as well as the locations where items are coming out of. So in a multi-company environment, you really are probably going to want to have different picking types, and in fact, in general, I haven't set it up here, but it's incredibly common for you to make an RMA picking type, so that way your inventory team can keep your receipts from vendors separate from your receipts from returns for the customer. I feel like I'm just listing things at this point. I swear I'm going to show them to you in a real world environment here shortly. But allow on portal. Do you want this to be available for a customer to initiate this return, right? So sometimes you're going to have customer service scenarios and you don't want the customer to be able to pick those. So you get to choose what gets displayed and what they can choose from the front end. And then we have invoice on completion. So do you want the invoicing method to be called? So if you're doing a manual RMA or an RMA based on a stock picking, when an RMA is marked as done, it will always generate a credit note and it'll generate it for the sale price. There we go. It will generate it for the sale price of the product because you don't have a sale order where you know what the unit price that customer purchased it for was. But if it's based on a sale order, we're going to call the invoicing method from the sale order. Maybe you're in a state where you actually need to issue an invoice. Maybe it's in a state where it issues a credit note. Next RMA template is going to be, if as soon as this RMA is done, do you need to automatically kick off another one? So this tends to be important for like return to vendors, and that's really, it kind of depends on the business, right? So say you have really expensive items or something like that, oftentimes people will set up a next RMA template so that way when they receive the item from the customer, they turn around and they ship it back to their vendor for a refund. But another option for return to vendors is just to leave this blank, collect up all your returns in a returns location, and go ahead and clear that on some sort of recurring basis where you create a manual RMA where you just build up the items you need to return to a vendor and send them out in mass instead of individual. And then like I said, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this area, but this is where you get to choose if you want to receive the goods back from the customer and or ship goods back out to the customer or a vendor in the case of an RTV. Down here we have internal instructions, so we'll see this. It's essentially a way for the user, the internal user, to see if they're selecting the right template. You can give them some guidance. And then customer instructions are what we're going to see on the front end. So after the customer submits the RMA, these will display, so it can tell them what they should expect as their next steps in the process. So the last configuration thing I'm going to show you before we actually go in and look at some RMAs is going to be on products. Not plural, just a single muffin. Okay, so under here in the sales tab, we have a section for eligible days. This is going to be the return period for this product. So this one right here is for sale returns, and then this one down here is for the warranty returns. So you can kind of have a distinction. I'll accept sale returns for this period of time, and then if it's a warranty return reason, then I'll accept it for a separate period of time. So quick rundown of what the numbers here mean. 0 in either of these fields would mean you accept returns on these indefinitely. A negative number means you never accept returns on these items. And then the positive number is just that. It's the number of days from the sale order confirmation for which you'll accept a return for these goods. So we're going to hop over here into our orders. We're going to take a look at this order right here. So we can see that we have this muffin that I was just talking about that we looked at the settings for, as well as some chocolate. And as a backend user, I have multiple ways that I can start an RMA. So I could go into the RMA app, I could click a new RMA, etc. I can also just initiate it from here. This will jump me into where I need to be so I can initiate the RMA. So I'm going to say that I'm going to do a sale return. At that point, I get to select the order that I'm initiating the return for. And then adding lines is going to show me all of the products that are on that order. So it'll show me the ordered quantity, delivered quantity, invoice quantity. So I have all the information I need about the state of the items on the order. And then I can see right here that this muffin is not eligible for return because I have the sale return period set to a negative number. Down here, I can return the chocolate. Now, one thing I want to note here is we will see this on the front end as well, but because I'm a back-end user, it's telling me I'm not eligible for return, but I can ultimately make the customer service decision that I do want or need to return the item for this customer. So if I want to do that, I'm just simply going to click here and I will be allowed to initiate a return for that item. And we'll also go ahead and return one of these dark chocolate bars. Okay. We see our internal instructions here, and we see the lines that are going to be on our RMA down here. Going to confirm this. All right, and when I did that, we now have an inbound picking. That's the only picking we see because we don't have a replacement that we need to send to the customer. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pretend that we are the inventory team. Now the inventory team really is likely going to be operating from the inventory dashboard, which is why I suggest a different operation type. But from here, I also have the flexibility to see the status of this picking. I don't need to go to the receipt or the delivery order to know if it's done or what the status of it is. I can see it right here. And if I need to jump to it, I can do so. We're just going to go ahead and process this return. And I will mark this as done. So when I mark the RMA as done, we are going to get a draft credit note automatically generated for us based on the configuration of this template. Again, it's not a requirement, it's a decision that you make as the business. And we can see the details of the credit that's going to be issued back to the customer. So the accounting team can confirm this, reconcile it against the original invoice, or issue a refund back to the customer's original payment method. And if we go back out here to the sale order, we can see that the quantities for the various columns have been updated. And because I did decrement it based on ordered quantity, we see that I now have it set to 0 quantity for the muffins and 1 for the piece of chocolate. So let's go ahead and see this from the customer perspective on the front end and what that would look like for them. Okay, so I'm logged in as the customer for the sale order. So I'm just going to hop in here and click on RMAs. I will create a new RMA. And let's go ahead before I want to do like a return and replace scenario. But before I do that, let's see what it looks like for the customer when they are not eligible to return an item. All of those orders are on the same date. It's like somebody was preparing their talk last night. Okay, so what we can see here is that for the customer, they will not be able to enter a quantity they want to return for this product because they are past the eligibility period. In this case, it's not eligible at all for sale returns. So they will not be able to initiate this from here. Again, they could call customer service or talk to customer service, chat them, however your company operates, and request this, in which case the customer service team can make an exception and they can initiate or enter a quantity for this product. But let's go ahead and hop back out here, and I want to create a warranty RMA. All right, so because we have a positive number for our warranty period for this product, I can go ahead and request that I can return this product here. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. We'll still just return one of each. Actually, no, let's just do the muffin. Now, under what scenario you're going to be returning and replacing muffins, I don't know. That's your prerogative, but this company returns and replaces muffins. So we can see the items that are eligible or that they submitted for the RMA. We see the customer instructions clearly. And then down here as the customer, we can go ahead and send a message to the company. So all right, so we'll go ahead and jump back over here as an internal user. We'll go into our RMAs, and we see this RMA has been requested, but it's still in the new state, so it's not confirmed. So Finn here has a scheduled activity. We're not logged in as Finn, but Finn would have received a notification there's an RMA that he needs to review. So he would go in here and he can actually go ahead and just respond, or I can respond. Okay, and the customer ultimately will see that in their portal because we sent it as a message. Assuming you actually have mail configured, they're going to get an email, all that good stuff. So we'll confirm this RMA. Now, it's really common, and I actually suggest this frequently, to set up email templates. That way you actually just have to click 2 buttons, and depending on the scenario, you can just go ahead and send the next steps for the customer. I didn't pre-configure any email templates, but it's super easy to do. And it's also really common to pair this with automated actions. So say you have an email template with some logic in it about the language to use based on the state of the RMA as well as the type of RMA, and then an automated action so you confirm your RMA and it automatically emails those instructions to the customer, and that makes the process even smoother. But because this is a warranty return and replace, we're going to see that we have an inbound and an outbound picking. So I'm not going to get too much into this right here, but I did just want to note that you can select inbound and outbound carriers, again, from the RMA itself. So you don't need to go to the picking to do this. And let me check my notes here. 47% of customers want prepaid return labels for their returns. So this comes from a couple of other modules that we have, but you do have the ability to generate labels, and then you could automatically attach those to your email templates as well. So when you respond to their customer, they just have to print out the label, slap it on the box, and ship the returns to you. We're going to go ahead and complete this picking. All right, and then we'll go ahead and we will ship out the replacement as well. So another common configuration here is to have some sort of dummy shipping method that might stop somebody from shipping the replacement before you've received the return. It's completely up to you. Some people want to ship the replacement immediately as like a cross ship. They're willing to ship the replacement while they're still waiting for the return. Other companies want to receive the return before they send out the replacement. So that's kind of configurable and at your discretion. All right, we'll validate this. And then in this case, we're just going to go ahead and mark this as done. And because of our configuration and the fact that we replaced the product instead of just returning it, we're not going to get any credit note. There's no need to issue a credit note because we've replaced the product for them. All right, so I think I'm just about on time, and that was my last thing that I wanted to show today. So thank you, and I open it up for any questions. Hello. We're getting situated. Do I?
So hello everyone. Thank you for joining us for the refund and return process. Thank you, Kelly, for this talk. It was clearly going to make the return policy and everything easy for our customers. Actually, we have some questions for you.
Okay, let's do it.
The first one is it possible to analyze the return reason?
To analyze the return reason, yeah, that's a really good question. So the way in which you could analyze the return reason would be by adding tags. So there are tags available right here, so the customer service team can tag the reason for the return. You have configuration options here to add additional tags if you have the permissions to be editing templates and things like that. So you could tag it. Another thing I would say is the type of the RMA. So the RMA template provides you some of that reporting as well. So the tags are supplemental, just like everywhere else in Odoo. They're just intended to give you additional information. But the types really come into play when you're trying to determine like the cause, so to speak. Like a warranty return, for example, that's the top level reason. You're doing it because there's something wrong with the product or it would fall under your warranty scenario versus just a return. And then the tags can provide you that supplemental information about what kind of piece of your warranty policy did it fall under, and then you can do, again, just like everywhere else in Odoo, your groupings and filterings around this information.
Amazing, very clear. Another question says, is it possible to have the partial?
To have partial?
Yeah, I believe they are referring to a partial return, I guess.
Meaning like perhaps a customer ships in like half of the items that they requested the return for, or?
I guess the question is not clear. Please add more information at the end of the pad.
So I will just note that if it is like, oh, they returned 4 items, but they really returned 2 or something like that, you would just treat that the way you do anything else in Odoo when you're doing the return process, right? Like you might not create a back order in this case, for example, when you're doing the receipt. There might be 4 quantity on there or 2 separate products and they didn't return one of them. And you may just not create a back order, go ahead and finish up the receipts, mark the RMA as done. If it's related to a sale order, again, you're going to be invoicing based on the state of that sale order. So you're going to get the right outcomes. And then if the customer comes back later and says, well, hey, I forgot to ship this one item, then you can just initiate a new RMA for them.
Okay, perfect. Next question says, can we make the requirement to upload photographic evidence mandatory, but just for DOAs?
Oh, okay, good question. So not just with like configuration, you're not just going to be able to like check a box and do something like that, at least not right now, but certainly with a small customization, I can see that as being possible. So that's really just an attachment object and you make that a required field. So a small customization, but certainly possible to do.
Okay, nice. Another question says, what happens with the original Odoo way of returning goods?
Oh, the original Odoo way of returning goods, that's still here, right? So that's still 100% possible. And I think it just depends on the business and kind of separation of concerns. How big is your business? Who are the people doing these things? So the Odoo way of doing returns is to go to the transfer. You say that you want to initiate a return. And then you just select some options like what's your returns location and things like that. So that's still 100% possible. It is just, again, about who is going to be processing the RMA, the return process itself. And the Odoo way of doing returns, there's no front end way to initiate that or anything like that. So that still exists and it's still possible. And even with the RMA's app, you can still use that in certain circumstances because, again, businesses need to be flexible. So there are going to be situations where, you might need to do like a really special thing. You can still use the Odoo return from a transfer feature.
Okay, perfect. And last but not least,
yes.
Correctly, I understood that RMA is a separate model in Odoo, or is it a question of settings in sales model?
So RMAs is a separate application. So that's provided by Hibou. So it's a third-party app. So you'd be looking to say need to be on Odoo SH or on a self-hosted solution, cloud-hosted solution, etc. It's not available on SaaS for that reason. So it is a standalone app that's available for purchase on the App Store, and you don't have to use it in association with sales. So using it in combination with sales is the most common. But you don't have to because like I showed for how it applies to things, you can have fully manual RMAs where you just build them up however you need to by adding lines. You can also base it on stock picking. So sales is helpful because so many people use sales, but it's absolutely not a requirement to use it in conjunction with sales.
Okay, perfect. That was really helpful. Thank you so much, Kelly, for this talk. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. I hope it was very clear to you. And see you in another talks.
All right, thank
Thanks.
you.